Would you like to join me for dinner with Toulouse-Lautrec?
Sure.
Okay, it's going to happen today. All right. Toulouse-Lautrec was born in 1864 and died in 1901. He was 36 years old when he died. He had a 20-year career. It was amazing. And he died of alcoholism and syphilis. Toulouse-Lautrec is quite a character in one way, and in another, you would expect it. So let's get how this all started. His parents were royalty in a sense. They were aristocratic French and had lots of money. His father never had to work. His father was an athlete, had a lot of fun. And so when he was born, the father just didn't quite like that child from the very beginning. There was something different about him. One is he had kind of a smashed head, and one of his jaws was distorted. And as time passed, about 4 years later, they had a second child. And that boy died after a year. The father didn't want anything more and left. His wife, never divorced, but left. Kind of gave her enough money to live on. And as time passed, the boy grew and was kind of frail. Just not quite that, not strong. And at the age of 12, he fell and broke one leg. A year later, he fell and broke the other leg. And neither one of those legs healed properly. And he had to walk with a cane from then on. Toulouse-Lautrec was, he was a boy, and he liked to draw. He didn't want to play games. He didn't want to play sports. He wanted to draw. And he was especially good at drawing horses and animals. And they actually hired a professional artistic tutor to help him draw horses. And then the father is, getting very suspicious, and people are wondering and whatever. And so the mother leaves, and he is taken care of for 8 years by a nanny. And that actually he left earlier, and nanny came in. And so Toulouse-Lautrec is studying, and he decides he wants to be an artist. And now we'll get to about age 14 and 15, and he moves to Paris. They had a place in Paris where he could go. And Toulouse-Lautrec became a different person. He discovered two wonderful things that would change his life. One was alcohol, and the other was prostitutes. Now, we gotta go back to one of the other things about this guy. You see, he didn't have a normal childhood because he had another disability. And the disability was enlarged, extremely enlarged genitalia. And what happened with that is all of the friends, school, whatever, they kind of figured this out. And so he was given the nickname Tripod. Now, what we have to go with was this boy, when he, after the accident, grew properly, it was his legs that didn't grow. His upper body grew. So I want you to take a look at me here. Think of me like this, and now cut 10 inches off my leg at the bottom. But keep my body the same. That was Toulouse-Lautrec. So anyway, I want you to get into this because we'll get to the part where Toulouse-Lautrec was not besides painting, he loved to cook. It was fun. It was something he could do in his house. He didn't have to go out. But he was discovering at the bordellos, this was quite fun, and he was an artist, and he discovered that he didn't want to have stuffed doll type people as models. He wanted active women. And the women in the bordello loved him. And that is how that whole thing of painting women came about. So this was a cookbook that was published several years after he died. It was published in 1933, I believe, and came into the United States in English in 1966. So it's Toulouse-Lautrec on Maurice Toyant. And that was his business partner, so to speak. It was his agent. And they both loved to cook. So I want you to have a little adventure with this cookbook, and it will tell you a lot about the time. So the first, you may not be able to tell much about that. This is an ordinary picture of a couple dining. Okay, just an ordinary picture. But you will notice there's a lot of line work, a lot of lines. And Toulouse-Lautrec had a reputation for using his paintbrush like a pencil. And so that was one of his styles. Now this is a menu that was at the Moulin Rouge. And so the Moulin Rouge was the one who gave him his big time. He was getting money for painting menu covers. And then, of course, he went on to paint posters for them. So I want to show you what made the Moulin Rouge famous was the can-can. Now, this is a little bit different picture of the can-can than most people. It, first of all, is in dark colors and whatever. And I would want you to know that when you look down here at this foot, if you were a proper can-can dancer, that foot would be up here in a perfect straight line. And it was the joy of it all. Okay, now we get to the part which I like the most. I'm going to advocate that Toulouse-Lautrec was very important for women in many, many ways. You see, at this point in history, a restaurant in Paris, a restaurant in London, women could not go to the restaurant because women, married women, were supposed to stay at home and cook and do things at the home, not go out to a restaurant. So what happens with this is that Toulouse-Lautrec is starting to do posters, and people are seeing these beautiful women. And there's a cabaret show, and women, you know, are starting to be aware that in Paris that there's a cabaret, but women could not go there unless they were not married. So along the line, this is one of the most famous restaurants in Paris ever. It's still there. It's Maxime's. And for Maxime's, what happened? Maxime's didn't allow women in, okay? But they would allow women who weren't married. And that went on, and in London, the same thing was going on at the Savoy. And along came a chef named Escoffier. And they decided that they wanted to turn this into a restaurant where women could come. So what happened is, Escoffier thought about this, and there were a lot of famous women entertainers, and that usually meant they were opera singers. So they decided they would create a plan to entice women to come there. They would change the rules so wives could come to the restaurant. And that is when things changed. We had Nellie Melba, Melba Toast, Peaches Melba, we had Sarah Bernhardt's Strawberries, all of that. And so it changed the direction of those things. I hope that you'll remember that Toulouse-Lautrec helped you get into a restaurant.
Yeah.